Greetings, fellow students. So the topic that I have chose to talk about is actually chapter 4 from NVC, which is identifying and expressing feelings. And I decided to choose this topic because I feel like it's probably the most important aspect in regards to conflict resolution, because we cannot begin to resolve a single conflict in our lives if we don't first learn how to properly express how we feel so that others can understand. So, the first point that I've chosen to discuss is feelings versus non feelings. There was a very important statement to me in regards to this chapter, which says that using the English language, we tend to be very confusing with how we express our feelings to other people. Obviously, we use a lot of slang. And a good example of this would be that we tend to use I feel statements, but we don't actually follow that statement up at all with an emotion. We follow it up with something that's more, like an opinion. And an example of this would be that I feel I didn't get a fair deal, which isn't a feeling at all. It's more of an opinion based on another perspective. Another good example in regards to identifying and expressing feelings are that we tend to concern ourselves more with what we think we are versus actual feelings. An example of this would be I feel misunderstood or I feel abused, etc., which is more of an assessment of other people's understanding of us rather than an actual I feel statement. I feel like it's incredibly important, of course, to properly express how we feel, especially when using an I feel statement, because if we don't do this, then there's no way for anybody to at all understand where we're actually coming from. And it's just going to promote the other party to be more angry or annoyed by our I feel statement rather than actually understand the emotions that we're experiencing due to the situation in which we're discussing. Another incredibly valid point to me was the cost of unexpressed feelings. And this could be an incredibly extensive topic. But to summarize that area, I feel like it was the most important thing to me was that in reading the list of words in chapter 4, they had a list regarding words that were appropriate I feel statement words to use in a discussion and a list that were inappropriate I feel statement words. And what really surprised me was that when I actually read these I feel statements and list of words to my partner, there was actually quite a few of them in which I even myself was incredibly surprised that the words listed were considered to not be proper I feel statements, things that I've used many times in my life. And they're actually really more opinion based rather than actually a feeling. And it was something that I had never really put much thought into until reading this chapter. So, in summary, in general, I think that it's incredibly important to properly express ourselves to others around us, especially when it comes to conflict resolution as a whole, because how would you ever express or, sorry, resolve a conflict if you can't even express yourself properly? So I found it incredibly beneficial to read about, the difference between what's actually an identifiable feeling versus what's not a valid feeling. And I was incredibly stunned to see that even myself, let alone I'm sure many others, are guilty of using words that aren't very appropriate for self expression.